that feeling like, you know, uh, Amazon can read your mind, like those product recommendations that are just a little too spot on?
Yeah, it's like, how did they know I needed that?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, it's AI at work, and over in Europe, the EU is trying to make sure all those algorithms are playing by the rules.
it's true. We've reached a point where AI isn't some abstract, futuristic concept anymore. It's really woven into our daily lives. And that's
Yeah.
exactly why this EU AI Act is such a big deal.
So, for our listener today, we're doing a deep dive on this AI Act, Europe's ambitious attempt to create a whole code of conduct for artificial intelligence. We'll break down exactly what it means for you and really for the future of technology.
Well, the AI Act actually comes into force on August 1st, 2024. They've got this 12-month grace period for developers to kind of get in line with all the new rules. It's kind of a countdown for companies to make sure their AI systems are developed and used responsibly.
Yeah, a 12-month window to wrangle all those algorithms. I mean, that feels like forever in the tech world, but also no time at all. So, can you give us the kind of the main points? What is this AI Act all about?
Well, in a nutshell, the EU, they want to ensure that artificial intelligence is a force for good. So imagine AI systems designed for all sorts of tasks, everything from generating text to analyzing complex data, all while following this strict ethical framework.
Okay, so they don't want to stifle innovation, but they also don't want AI to run wild.
Exactly. They're going with what they call a risk-based approach.
Oh,
It's
that.
basically evaluating how much harm AI systems could potentially cause and creating regulations that match those risks. And that's where the code of practice comes in. Think of it like translating a complicated legal document into something anyone can pick up and understand.
Okay, so less legal jargon, more real world stuff. I like it. So we've got this code of practice, a roadmap, so to speak, for navigating the AI Act. But let's bring it down to earth for our listener. How will this actually change their day to day experience with AI?
That's the million-dollar question, right? How do we take these regulations from the abstract and show how they actually make a difference in people's lives? Take transparency, for example. All those stories we keep hearing about AI-generated content that's basically blurring the lines between what's real and what's, you know,
Fake.
exactly. So the code aims to tackle that head on.
It's like AI has become this magic show where we see the amazing outcome, but we have absolutely no idea how the trick is done.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The code basically wants us to peek behind the curtain. They're demanding more transparency from developers. So imagine you might actually start seeing labels on AI-generated content, much like those nutrition labels you see on food. You'll know what data went into training the AI, and that'll help you make a more informed decision about its reliability.
So no more blindly trusting the algorithm. We get to see behind the scenes, understand all the ingredients, so to speak.
Exactly. And this leads us to another crucial area, copyright. Think about the sheer volume of data used to train these AI systems, especially in creative fields like music, art, literature. Let's say an AI whips up a song that sounds exactly like a Beatles hit. Who owns the copyright? That's one of the many things this code will try to clarify.
It's definitely a bit of a jungle out there for artists and creators right now, and they're obviously concerned about their work being used without their consent or, of course, compensation.
It's a tricky situation. The code will have to lay down some very clear guidelines to navigate these really complex issues. This is particularly important in the EU, which has a strong track record of upholding intellectual property rights.
Absolutely. So we've got transparency, copyright, but this code goes even further, right? Let's talk about the big picture stuff, the systemic risks. What are we talking about here? Robot overlords.
Uh-huh. Let's not get carried away. It's more about anticipating those unintended consequences of AI becoming so widespread. Think about algorithms that might unintentionally, reinforce existing inequalities. Or imagine the potential for AI to, let's say, supercharge the spread of misinformation.
Those are some serious concerns, and they impact not just individuals, but society as a whole.
Absolutely. And the EU is taking those risks very, very seriously. The code is going to be key in establishing mechanisms to identify, assess, and ultimately mitigate these potential pitfalls. So for instance, let's imagine an AI system that's used for hiring purposes, but inadvertently shows bias towards certain demographics because it's been trained on, well, biased data. The code's aim is to prevent these types of situations from happening.
So this code of practice, it aims to address these big kind of systemic risks, but where do you even begin? I mean, how do you even start to try and, wrangle something as complex as AI? It's like, ugh.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And the EU realized, they needed to get everyone on board. So they created the European AI Office, and their job is to basically spearhead the development of this whole code.
So the AI office, they're kind of like
The referee.
the referee, bringing all the players together in this, rapidly evolving world of AI.
Yeah, exactly. And earlier this year, they actually put out a call for input, inviting experts from all across, the whole AI landscape to share their thoughts and insights. So that's AI developers, industry leaders, legal experts, ethicists, even everyday users like the people listening to this right now. They all had a chance to weigh in.
Wow, that's actually really impressive. It sounds like they're really trying to make a code that reflects a lot of different viewpoints. So what was the response like?
They were overwhelmed. They got something like 430 submissions
Wow.
from individuals and organizations, all eager to contribute. It really highlights just how much interest there is in shaping the future of AI.
For sure. Okay, so they have this like mountain of feedback. How do they go from hundreds of submissions to actually creating a concrete set of guidelines?
Right, so they formed these working groups. Each one is focusing on a specific part of the code, like those systemic risks we talked about earlier, or how copyright works with AI-generated content, things like that.
Okay, so it's kind of like breaking down a really complex problem into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Exactly. And these working groups, their job is to really dig into the submissions, debate different solutions, and start drafting specific guidelines. It's a back and forth process, so there's lots of opportunity for feedback and revisions.
So it's not just like a one and done situation. They're really taking the time to, get this right.
Absolutely. They've even been holding workshops with AI developers to make sure that the requirements in the code are actually doable, that they can put them into practice, and keep things as transparent as possible. All of the minutes from those meetings, all the summaries of their discussions, they're all available to the public.
Huh. It seems like transparency is a big theme here. It's not just about making the AI systems themselves easier to understand. It's about making the whole process of regulating AI open for everyone to see.
Yeah, you got it. That transparency is really about building trust. It allows for a more inclusive approach to governing AI.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got these working groups, drafts, feedback. When can we expect to actually see a final version of this code of practice?
Well, the finish line is in sight. They're hoping to present the final version at a big closing meeting in April 2025.
Wow, so less than a year away. Okay, so as we start to wrap up our deep dive here, what does all of this mean for the average person listening to this right now? Why should they care about an AI Act and a code of practice being developed, all the way over in Europe?
This is really just the start of a global conversation about how we, as a society, want to live with AI. The EU might be taking the lead, but their work here could have a ripple effect, influencing how AI is developed and used all over the world.
Yeah, it's like setting a standard, right? A blueprint for responsible AI.
Yeah, exactly. And for your listener, who's probably interacting with AI every single day, this code of practice, it represents a step towards a future where AI is more transparent, more equitable, and definitely more accountable. It's about making sure that as AI becomes even more integrated into our lives, that it reflects our values and that it ultimately benefits society as a whole.
It's a fascinating discussion to be having. And that concludes our deep dive into the EU's AI Act and the Code of Practice. We hope this has given you a better understanding of how Europe is shaping the future of AI and what it could mean for all of us.